Time again for another review. This time, Life is Strange. We got some meta shit going on. Because it's me over there in the corner. Right over there. Settle down. So Life is Strange. I knew I was going to like this game for a couple of reasons, really. I do like the narrative-based games. I was very interested in it. I didn't get a chance to play it until now, clearly. But I mean, I was blown away by what's in this game. Now, sure, there are problems. Let's start with problems. It's a little contrived, and I'm gonna have a spoiler section after this, so there's no spoilers this part. But there is time travel. That's the very beginning, or not time travel, but like you can rewind time. Very beginning. That's what you learn. That's all I'll say. And what that does. Oh, bad. I was talking about bad things. So there's some weird stuff with that. Some of the things it requires you to do with that rewind power isn't necessarily told very well. It only happens a couple times though, so it's not a big issue. The other, perhaps larger issue is sometimes you have to collect things around the environment, like bottles in one particular scene, and it's just frustrating and stupid and doesn't really have any place. Sometimes the puzzles can be a little weird and not, because you can complete some of them in many different ways, they can feel, like the feedback you'd get if you weren't solving something correctly. You can kind of feel that when you are solving something correctly because there are multiple different ways to do something. And they're all going to have different effects. So back to positive. So you can rewind time. And what this does is something that's so interesting and fun to me, and it turns the entire idea of the Walking Dead, whatever the fuck, on its head. Because you can now see, oh, if I take the blame for this, what happens? And then Max, the main character, will be like, well, I don't know, that didn't work out too great, let's try it again. And then you rewind time, and you try it again. And this time, I'm not going to take the blame for it. I will take the blame for it. Or I'll do this. I'll warn this character. Or I won't warn this character. And you can see how all these play out. And you can even do smaller things that the game does more towards the beginning, where you're, I have the audio off on this one, where you're talking to people and they'll be saying things to you, and you're like, well, I don't know what that is. And then you'll learn information, rewind time, enter the conversation again, and then impress them. And it's stupid, dumb crap. And speaking of stupid, dumb crap, there is weird dialogue stuff. There is some things. One particular example, something happens where someone gets suspended, or can get suspended. It doesn't have to happen. Someone can get suspended, and different characters will say, oh, that person got suspended. And then some of the other characters will say, oh, that person got expelled. And it doesn't make any sense because those are two very different things. And it's very strange that that even made it through to the game and they haven't even patched it out or anything like that. It's very strange. Very, very strange. I don't understand what that's about or how that even happens. There are other choices. So this is a positive and a negative, potentially, depending on who you are. There are many choices in this game that don't necessarily go anywhere, or depending on the branch, which is a very interesting branch, it could necessarily, it's not going to change too much if you choose one way or the other way. It's just the people you're talking to are going to say, oh, this happened, or oh, that happened. That's the only difference. And that's not necessarily a big problem to me because of what the choice was and because it did have implications later. They're just not as big, and some of them are, but some of them aren't. And you can understand that, and they even do what is one of the most amazing things to me. At the end of the third episode, something happens that just blew my mind. And it was something I didn't even think could happen. I wasn't expecting it at all. And it was like I was in shock. The closest comparison I have to it is an episode of Game of Thrones where, not to spoil it, but where Oberyn fights the Mountain. After that, that's the last scene. After that scene, I sat there in the credits with my mouth open, like, and just sat there the whole time. Like, I have no idea how to process this information. And Life is Strange, at the end of chapter 3, gave me that same feeling of like, holy shit, what just happened? And not only that, Max / me, the player, was responsible for it. What happened was because of me. I did that. And was just mind-blowing of how it happened and the implications it has and how that all wraps up. Great. Now, there's another, I guess, little gripe. I could have done without the kind of you have to save the town from something angle that this does. I would have preferred it. It tells a very interesting story of you with these powers and what's going on in the town. There's a missing girl, and it's your friend's Chloe's friend. So you're looking for her, and you haven't seen Chloe in years, and you're getting to know each other again in 5 years. You haven't seen each other. And first I thought this game was about them like becoming adults and like it's some lesbian relationship thing. And I was like, oh, that's cool, that's interesting. And it's not about that at all. So I don't know where I got that idea from, but at about the middle of episode 2, I'm like, I don't think that's what this game's about. There's a lot more time travel in this than I thought. But so you're trying to figure out what happened to the missing person. But there's also something going on in the town. And there's also all the interpersonal relationships. And I could have done without the stuff that's going on with the town, because while it is interesting, it is ultimately the most gamey thing about it. And I don't know. It's fun to do everything else in the game and walk around and even hear what Max has to say about everything in the world. Like, I go and I look up to every poster because I want to see what she has to say. I want to see what's going on in this world. It's so interesting, and it does feel very thought out. It does fall into the trap, or the problem that a lot of these kind of teen dramas / any show that takes place in a high school falls into, where everyone in your class is pretty much everyone you meet outside of class. In your dorm room, or in your dorm section, it happens to be that all those people are in the same floor, in the same section. You know what I mean? Like, in a real school, there are more than 10 people, right? And there are more 10 people at the school, but you don't see them, you don't know them. It's these people, and it's the same trap that, I mean, fucking any teen drama falls into, like Degrassi to what's the one everyone likes that's only had one season, Freaks and Geeks. They all have the same problem of it's just these people, it's just that like one teacher or whatever. But on the same mind, what happens in this game is it was so interesting. I really cared for Max and for Chloe and for to see these people and even these like stupid relationships. Like, there's this one girl who just constantly gets hit in the head with something, and so you'll see her get hit with something, rewind time, and tell her to move out of the way. And I liked helping her because it was just a dumb shit thing I could do with my rewind power. And going back to the rewind power, it does have a lot of interesting puzzle mechanics along with it, because you can pick up items and then rewind time and still have the item. But they never, I don't know, that might be a spoiler, I won't say that. They go, it might be spoiler time. It might be spoiler time. Okay. It's gonna be spoiler time. So, big ol' spoiler sign. They never do anything like Chloe's very impressed with your rewind ability, and she tests you and does all this stuff. But the very idea that I can hold something and have it with me, for sake of game design convenience, really, the first thing I would expect Chloe to do is say, hey, rewind time while holding my hand and see if we can both go back. And it never does that. It never goes that far. It does go into crazy land, specifically going back to the end of episode 3, where you try and save her dad, and you do save her dad, and in the process, you end up making Chloe a quadriplegic, which is a very fun experience and super uplifting. And I loved it. Which was so heartbreaking. And even the end of that where she's like, I'm so happy. Well, now, can you kill me? Because I'm in this chair and I'm going to die anyway and I'm bankrupting my parents. Like, please, this is the last happy day I want on Earth. And I'm like, I can't deal with this game. I can't deal with it. So good. I mean, it had these emotional moments that from the first 15 minutes of Firewatch, I would have expected that game to have these emotional moments. But this game does. About fucking teen girls in high school has more poignant emotional moments than that game about adult things does. It's ridiculous. There are some, I mean, it's just so well put together. And it's a long game too. It's about 14 hours or so. Each of these chapters is about 2.5 hours. It's pretty lengthy. You're not going to finish, you might not even finish one episode in a sitting. You might. But the choices that happen, I mean, things that, simple dumb shit. That's what's so good about it. It's not The Walking Dead. Do I tell them I've been bitten or do I not? Do I chop off my arm or do I not? It's like, do I tell the principal or do I not? And what happens if you tell the principal? Minor rippling effects. Minor rippling effects. Like, do I point this gun at someone? Do I pull the trigger? Do I not pull the trigger? If I pull the trigger, it's empty. So nothing happens. But now that person is like, you're fucking psycho. It's these weird, interesting choices and these things that totally unintended consequences that are minor but very interesting, like with the train tracks, you can switch the train track. And I loved seeing it. The end of chapter 2, which is also sad, has you dealing with Kate, who is up on the roof trying to commit suicide, and you can save her or not. And in that scene, Max has used her powers too much and you can't rewind time, which is horrifying. And I wasn't able to save her. And I was like, I guess that's just part of the game. I don't even know what I could have done. And you get to the end and you get to see your little percentages. And it's like, no, most people saved her. And I'm like, I'm a fucking terrible person. I let her die. She killed herself because I couldn't save her. And it was such an interesting moment. Not as heartfelt or impactful as the end of chapter 3, but still very interesting. And that's one of those choices where I'm talking about, like, the end result. I'm not sure what happens if you save her, but I imagine not much is different because of how little changed. They largely avoid the school. Oh, that's the other complaint I forgot. You really go to the same places over and over. There's not a lot of new areas. There are maybe 4 areas in the entire game you go to once. The rest are removed, are reused over and over and over again, and it's fine. It's fine. Let's see how long this is. Now with the ending, or particularly the last chapter, which, holy shit, it starts doing some weird stuff, particularly with who with what's his name? I forget his name right now. The teacher, who I didn't suspect the entire time is actually the mastermind. Like, that's the other thing it does. Oh, I didn't even bring this up. That's the other thing it does. It has a character like David Madsen, who is this total, the first time you meet him, total dickhead, and I hate him, and he's stupid, and fuck you, and blah, 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 blah. But then over the course of the game, you realize, like, he was in the army, he's got the things, he's really trying, he's really in love with Chloe's mom. It's this whole thing. Like, this is a much more detailed character than just, it's David Madsen, whatever. You end up caring about every character in a similar way, even the ones you hate. Where it's like, this is just you at your point in life. Like, David Madsen is really trying, but he is an idiot and he keeps fucking it up because he just flies off the handle and he's too paranoid because he was in the army, and you can understand it. And it's so much more interesting than I even thought half of this game would have been. We got David Madsen. Who else we got? We got the teacher guy. Didn't suspect him at all. We got Nathan, who I hated the entire time, but you realize he's seeing a shrink and his parents aren't helping him and he's on medication. He's like really messed up. And his resolution is he just gets killed. Just like, oh well, I guess you just die now. And I'm like, well, fuck, man. This is awful. This is not good. But the game is so good, and the ending, and there is some complaints about the ending as a whole, because you talk to a lot of people and they kind of reveal too much information and they're too open. And even the text messages you get is everyone's so eloquent in these text messages, and you'll like yell at someone and then they'll message you back, I'm really sorry, I flew off the handle. Da, da, da. I'm like, who texts like this? It's very strange. It's very uncharacteristic for certain characters. But these are like minor problems. Oh, I'll talk about that division in a second. These are minor quibbles with the game I loved. I really enjoyed the game. I should have played it last year. I should have played it when it came out, but having to play this game when it came out with the episodes would have been horrifying. Just horrifying. The way they end episode 3 is a disaster area. I have not played the Division. I'm going to be playing the Division tonight and this weekend and talking about it next week. And I'm not excited about the Division. I'm excited about the beta because I'm probably never going to buy the game, and so I'll get to play it for about 6 hours. And that's enough for me. There's something about it that I'm not exactly super interested in. There's something, it just doesn't feel right to me. They're putting it up as too much of a multiplayer shooter, and I'm more into the single player idea. I'll see though. I would love to love this game, The Division. Love to love it. Not gonna like it as much as Life is Strange. But I think that's pretty much it, because it's so good, and I don't want to just talk about the story for 10 hours.